Hello everyone. So welcome to the 12th session in our modern Indian history course. And today we'll look at the times of the Lord Hastings. Before starting the session, let us do some questions. Lord Wellesley we have done in the last time, and you can see the importance of the Lord Wellesley because a lot of questions have been asked on him, right? For example, let's start with it. It's the 2020, that means this year's question. Wellesley established the Fort William College at Calcutta because why he established the Fort William College? First, he was asked by the board of directors to do so, at London to do so. He wanted to revive the interest in the Oriental learnings in India. He wanted to promote William Carey and his associates' employment, and he wanted to train the British civilians for the administrative purpose in India. So, we have discussed that, not very specific to it, but we have discussed about the idea of the Fort William and why it was moved to it was closed down in 1806 and it was moved to London, and it was for the training of the British civilians for the administrative purpose. We have discussed that within the context of contribution of the Lord Wellesley to the civil services. Let us see the next question. Very important question, again a previous year question. With reference to the educational institution during the colonial rule, consider the following pair. Founder, just one second. Yes. So the institution, the founder, first the Sanskrit College at Banaras, William Jones, Calcutta Madrasa, Warren Hastings, and Fort William College, Arthur Wellesley. So I'll give you time. Pause the video and try to answer this question. You can answer this particular question. It's a very important question. This question was asked in I think 18 or 2017. Here is not mentioned, but it's a very recent year question. Pause the video and try to answer the question. We have all discussed all three parts of it. Now, in the previous question itself, we have seen that it is not the Arthur Wellesley who was there, right? It was the Richard Wellesley. So third statement itself is wrong when you consider it was the Richard Wellesley. So Lord Wellesley was the Richard Wellesley, not the Arthur Wellesley. So third statement is wrong. That means this is wrong. This is wrong. That means second statement is right. Then you have to check the first statement. The Sanskrit College at Banaras by the William Jones. William Jones was not responsible for the Sanskrit College. Rather, he was for the Asiatic Society of Bengal. And it was the Jonathan Ducannon, the governor of the Bombay, who established the Sanskrit College at Banaras in 1791. This also we have discussed while we were discussing the Warren Hastings. So answer is only 2 only. Okay. You can see, with these questions, you can identify the patterns. For example, when you revise your old discussions, old sessions, you can focus, acha, this is important because on this idea, the previous year question has been asked. So you can give more emphasis to that part, right? From that regard, these questions become important. Next is the first Indian ruler who joined the subsidiary alliance. It's a very old question, 1994. So who was the first ruler who joined the subsidiary alliance? You can again pause the video and try the answer. It was Nizam of Hyderabad. We have discussed that. So Nizam of Hyderabad was the first one who signed this subsidiary alliance. Next, 2018 question. Which of the following statements does not apply to the system of the subsidiary alliance introduced by the Lord Wellesley? To maintain a large standing army at the other expense, to keep India safe from the Napoleonic danger, to secure fixed income for the country, to establish British paramountcy over the Indian state. Again, try to pause the video and try to answer the question. Very straightforward question. Now, the context in which subsidiary alliance was launched by Lord Wellesley, first, to maintain large army at their expense. Yes, he wanted to expand his army base within India. Let's go to the solution, then discuss it. So he wanted to have its army expansion into India. So he wanted to keep army at multiple places. Secondly, it was a Napoleonic danger that Napoleon can come and attack India, because at that time Tipu Sultan was also sending embassies and having correspondence with the Napoleon. Third, to secure fixed income for company. No. Yes, it later on expanded, and it was not the fixed income. The company started getting money from it because of the maintenance of this army, but it was not the objective of it. This was the objective of the permanent settlement. And the last one is to establish British paramountcy over the Indian states. Yes, because we have discussed that those who will become the part of the subsidiary alliance, one will be the paramount power, another will be the protected power. So protected power will be the Indian power, and the paramount power will be the British power, right? So these are the four options. Let us see the next question. At a time when the empires in the Europe were crumbling before the might of the Napoleon, which of the following governor general kept the British flag flying high in the India? It's a UPSC question, 1999 question. At the time when the empires in the Europe were crumbling under the might of the Napoleon, it's a very easy question. Especially if you see the continuation of the previous question, obviously it's a very easy question. And the answer is obviously Lord Wellesley. Again, I'll remind you, he is Richard Wellesley. He is not Arthur Wellesley. Arthur Wellesley was his brother who was a fighter. In fact, he was the one who fought against the Napoleon, Arthur Wellesley. Richard Wellesley was the Governor General and Administrator in India. Now let us start our discussion for today. So till now, within the Governor General, we have discussed about the idea of the Warren Hastings. So we have discussed the time of the Warren Hastings. So in the times of the Warren Hastings, we have discussed the Regulating Act has come, Act of 1781, when the amendment has happened to that particular act, when the power of the jurisdiction between Governor General and the Supreme Court were clearly divided. Governor General was placed above the Supreme Court. Then Pitt's India Act. Then we have discussed Pitt's India Act of 1784. Then Rohilkhand War of 1774, for which Warren Hastings was severely criticized. Then we have the first Maratha War and the Treaty of Salba in 1782. We have discussed all of this. Then second Mysore War. First Mysore War happened in the times of the Robert Clive. Then a trade relationship with Raja Chait Singh, Maharaj of Banaras, right? Nanda Kumar case and the Begum of Awadh, which has led to the impeachment proceedings of the Lord Hastings, for which he is freed, and is also led the foundation of the Asiatic Society of Bengal under the leadership of William Jones. So these are the things that we have discussed with respect to Warren Hastings, and it's good that we keep on revising that also. Then we discuss the time of the Lord Cornwallis, very important Governor General. Third Mysore War, Treaty of Seringpatnam finished, Tipu Sultan story almost de facto finished. Then Lord Wellesley finished Tipu Sultan altogether. Then we have Cornwallis Code. We have read his judicial reform, police reform, revenue reform. Revenue reform we have left, that is the permanent settlement system. We'll read it somewhere else. Then Europeanization of the administrative machinery, the racial profiling that we have discussed, and the introduction of the civil services. Then John Shore, we have discussed the Charter Act of 1793, Battle of Maratha. We have not discussed it, not very important one. But Charter Act of 1793, he was the one who was the responsible for the enactment of the permanent settlement and hand chosen successor of the Lord Cornwallis. Then we have the Lord Wellesley, in which time we have read the mainly the subsidiary alliance. The first with the Nizam of Hyderabad, fourth Mysore War, and the death of the Tipu Sultan. And then second Maratha War, right, 1803 to 1805. Then before that, Treaty of Bassein was signed. Treaty of Bassein then took over the administration of Tanjore, Surat, Karnataka. So these are the things we have discussed with respect to the Wellesley. Then after Wellesley came George Borlaug for only 2 years, right? George Borlaug, in his time that Vellore Mutiny happened. At that time, William Bentinck was also there in India. When we'll discuss the William Bentinck, we'll see that he was there in India when this Vellore Mutiny happened. And in his time, the ending of the Second Anglo-Maratha War also happened with the Treaty of Rajpur-Gad, that finally the treaty was signed by the Scindia, and it was the series of the subsidiary alliance which were signed. Then after John Borlaug comes the period of the Lord Minto I, that is, we have discussed, it was a passive phase. Treaty of Amritsar was signed with Ranjit Singh, and he has sent 4 missions to the different area. We'll see that. Then comes the time of the Lord Hastings, and this is what we have to study today. We have to study the times of the Lord Hastings. Before Lord Hastings, you can see the times of the Lord Minto. Whenever there is a passive phase, then whenever the new the Governor General will come, he'll face a lot of challenges, because whenever a British Governor General will not take up a very aggressive role, what will happen? The other powers will become strong. It will lead to a lot of anarchical situation. The British expansion does not take place then, or administrative passivity is there, then it will lead to a lot of anarchy, and that we will see the context in which the Lord Hastings arrives in India. So this is the whole context in which we are discussing things. Now, we have discussed about this, that is Treaty of Eternal Friendship that was signed with the Treaty of Eternal Friendship, which was signed. Lord Minto has sent this Treaty of Eternal Friendship with the Sindh, Amir of Sindh, signed by the Minto. Right? Then he has sent four people to different places, such as Metcalfe to Lahore, Elphinstone to Kabul, Malcolm to Tehran, and Nicholas Smith to Sindh. So this was the time of the Minto in India. After the time of the Minto comes the Lord Hastings. So before Lord Hastings comes to India, there are some changes which are happening in England. There are some philosophical trends or ideological trends which are happening in England when we need to understand it. Imagine what was the time in England. In England, the Industrial Revolution is taking foothold. Footprints of the Industrial Revolutions are increasing, right? So Industrial Revolution is taking place in the England, and some ideological changes are coming along with it. Firstly, the idea of the free traders. Now, as we have discussed earlier, the monopoly has been given to the East India Company. Just go in the India and trade. No one else will be given that sort of privileges. Now, that idea is getting broken up because a lot of idea of the capitalism, the free trade, the invisible hand of the Adam Smith, the idea of the Adam Smith, that we should not create these monopolies. We should create the free trader. That is the competition. We should promote free enterprise. We should not let anyone state intervene a lot in the economy. Hence, this exclusive charter which is given to the East India Company should not be there. Rather, they should be promoted the competition with which we can extract more revenue out of it. So that was one of the ideas in the England, and we will see the repercussions of these ideas into the further policies which will come. Secondly, the idea of the utilitarianism, especially led by John Stuart Mill. Before Mill, who was there? If you read in the ethics, that before Mill, it was the Bentham which was there. So the disciple of the Bentham and the Mill was there. Now, Mill and the Bentham both believe in the idea of maximum happiness of the maximum people. And they believe that maximum happiness can come when and when only the British crown will directly rule these colonies. When they will use this free trade, then we will civilize these people. Especially this Mill, John Stuart Mill, was very critical of the civilizational states, such as civilizational states or civilizational cultures such as India. He believed that these civilizational cultures, this India, these are like animals, or these are not civilized. So it is the divine duty of the Britishers to promote the civilization across the world. That was also the idea being reflected in the liberal thought at that time. John Stuart Mill also led one of the liberal thoughts, and they said it's more important to civilize these people than to conquer these people. Right? Obviously, that concurrence. मैंने क्या बताया था? I told you that we need all moral high ground. So this is the moral high ground with which these people are working. They are working with the moral high ground that we need to civilize. We need to civilize these people, and which is very important. Now, this is the idea of the free traders, utilitarians, and liberals. Then comes the idea of evangelicals. Evangelicals kaun hote hain? Who are these evangelicals? You should have seen, for example, in the morning time, if you see a lot of missionaries which are there, that God will help us, or open your purse and the God's miracle will come, something like that. So these are the people who believe in the idea of the Christianity and the Christian missionary, that the Christian ideas or the Christian values or the Christianity as a religion is far superior than the other religion, and we ought to promote Christianity. It is the Christianity which will civilize these people, and we need to increase the foothold of the Christianity over these people in these colonies as well. So these were the change in trends in the England, and that will be reflected when we'll come to the policy making when it comes to the India, right? Now, we have seen a series of acts. For example, we have seen the Regulating Act, we have seen the Pitt's India Act, and we have seen the Charter Act. Now, within the Charter Act, it was given that 20-year privileges will be given. And hence, there comes the time of 1813, and this Charter Act has to be updated. So, in 1813, again, that Charter Act has come. And now, in this Charter Act, you can see the influence of these ideas in your Charter Act. Let us see one by one. First, the company's monopoly in trade in India is broken up. They say now the company alone cannot be the only company which can trade with India. Company has retained the right to trade with the China and the trade in the tea. These three things were allowed to the company. Apart from that, means the company exclusively can do the trade in these things. That is trade with China and trade with tea. Otherwise, the company cannot have monopoly in the trade. That means now the other companies will come and they will establish their trade with India. Next, company shareholders were given 10.5% of the dividend on the revenue. Company was to retain the possession of territories and the revenue for the 20 more years. This is not a very important thing, but for 20 more years, this charter has been extended. Okay, go ahead, and 20 more years we have given you. That means, yes, you don't have monopoly, but you can retain this for 20 more years. Then the power of the board of control, the political authority, was further enlarged. British subjects were allowed to come and settle in India. Then sum of 1 lakh rupees, we'll reiterate this again, 1 lakh rupees was given to the Governor General, and it was said that you can use this money for the revival, promotion, encouragement of the literature, learning, science among the natives of the country. That means you can use this money for the education of the people of India in their own language. So the education was first time promoted through a Charter Act, and it was 1 lakh rupees given. You can say it was the first initiative done from the side of the England. Before that, we have seen the initiatives taken by the Baron Hastings. We have seen that Sanskrit College in Benares in 1791. We have seen that Fort William College being set up by Lord Wellesley. So it was taken up, removed later on. But these are the steps being taken for the education. And at the end, we'll make a list of the series of the steps which are taken for the education itself. Then regulations made by the Council of Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta were now required to be laid before the British Parliament. That means now British Parliament wants to have more power over the regulations made by the Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. Then constitutional position of the British territory was explicitly defined for the first time. This is a very important point. Now they have defined explicitly that these are the British territories of in India. Okay? These one statements you need to keep in mind. Next, separate accounts to be kept regarding the commercial transaction and the territorial revenue. Power of superintendence and direction of the board of control was not only defined but enlarged considerably, that we have discussed. And very importantly, because of the influence of these evangelists, what has happened? The Christian missionaries were permitted to come to India and preach their religion. Christian missionaries were permitted to come to India and preach their religion. Okay? So these are the provisions of the Charter Act of 1813. We will discuss a lot of questions on these Charter Acts so that all your confusions, all your doubts, and some extra information which is there, you'll get through questions as well. So यहाँ पे पढ़ लो, just read it here, and when we'll solve a lot of questions, you'll get a lot of ideas from there as well. Now comes the time of the Lord Hastings. Now he is not Baron Hastings, he is Lord Hastings. Now Lord Hastings has served in Indian American Revolution. He followed a very aggressive forward policy. We have discussed that when we were discussing the Maratha times in our lecture session 6. When we were discussing the times of the Maratha, we have discussed the idea about the times of the Lord Hastings. So his reforms can be seen in some of the expansion, the territorial expansion, some of the administration we will see, some of the reforms that we will see, and some socio-cultural steps being taken in his time. This is overall arcing idea of the Lord Hastings. I'm just again Warren Hastings. No, it's Lord Hastings. Now, first of all, you need to remember the time, 10 years he was given, 1813 to 1823, and that goes to show the importance of the Lord Hastings. For example, we don't read about George Borrow. Why? Only 2 years. We don't read a lot about Minto I. Why? Only 6 years. But very importantly, Lord Hastings. So first of all, we need to know about the background. We have discussed about war with the Nepal, that is with the Gorkhas, and the Treaty of Sagoli, which was signed later on. We have discussed that. We will read. We will again reread that. Very important that you remember that separation of the Pindaris. Very important. Then downfall of the Maratha Confederacy. We have seen that, and some reforms of the Hastings. We will see. If you look at the times of the Warren Hastings, what was the conditions in India in which the time he has come? Now, already I have told you the times of the Warren this Lord Hastings has been very, because before him there have been the Governor General which have been passive. For example, before him one Governor General which was active was Lord Wellesley, then George Borlow, and then Lord Minto, not very aggressive. So there was a lot of anarchy in the central India. Now, last time Marathas have fought, and the last time treaty they have signed in 1816. In 1813, again they were recouping. Again, their influence was increasing. So Marathas were still not subdued. So he will find the anarchy in the central India. The Marathas will take up their revenue, indulge in their guerrilla warfare, will take Sir Chaut and Sir Desmukhi. Then, in the times of the Lord Wellesley, what they have signed this subsidiary alliance. Now we have seen that when the subsidiary alliance is signed, the troops of the EIC will be stationed in these native states. Now what about the native troops? Now these native troops got disbanded and they become unemployed. When they become unemployed, they will become these Pindaris, and they will do this because they are warriors, because they can fight. So they will do this plundering and all these things. So Marathas could not control them. Okay? So Marathas, and then within the Marathas, we have discussed that they were recouping, but again there was a lot of infighting. Then there was plotting against the Britishers. We have discussed that. Baji Rao too, though he was incompetent, but he has the ambition to that I have signed this treaty with the Britishers and I will again fight against the Britishers. Then Gorkhas were expanding as well, which we have seen. Gorkhas themselves have consolidated their empire in the Nepal, the greater Nepal, and they also they are coming at the frontier of the Britishers. And then uh, the war is inevitable. The similar thing that we have discussed last time. For example, the Gorkhas, right? So Prithvi Narayan Shaw, he expanded the Gorkhas. Then Gorkhas, they expanded into the idea of the greater Nepal. You can see 1775 to 1814. And it was inevitable that the battle is going to happen. Why? Because now the Britishers are also expanding post the Treaty of Buxar into the areas of Awadh. Okay? Because now Awadh has also come under the subsidiary alliance. We have discussed that. When the Awadh has come under the subsidiary alliance, now the British are putting their troops in these areas. For example, we have discussed the areas in the Gorakhpur. They have, for example, in 1801, they have captured the Gorakhpur, and the troops are there in the Gorakhpur. When the Gorkhas have captured the Suroji and Butwal, these are the areas. Butwal, you can see. Then obviously the conflict is inevitable. When the conflict was there, Treaty of Sagoli was signed in 1816 and in the favor of the Britishers. So Nepal accepted a British resident. They ceded the areas of this. These are the areas of Uttarakhand, which is the present day Uttarakhand, was ceded to the India. Okay, you can have India, or you should say at that time was the Britishers. So it was ceded to the Britishers, and finally, Britishers also got these hill stations that were there. So got this hill station, Mussoorie, Nainital. Gorkhas joined the British Army, and we've discussed the agreement which was signed. And the Gorkhas in 1947 went on to serve both Indian Army and the British Army as well. We have discussed all of that. Now, so this was the story of the Gorkhas, which we have already done in our session number 7. Then session number 6, we have discussed about the idea of the after the second Anglo-Third Maratha War. For example, the times of the Lord Wellesley, we have discussed the times of the George Borlow, times of the Lord Minto. And then comes the idea of the Lord Hastings. He said that I want more. I will not let this anarchy which is prevailing there, or the plotting against the Britishers which is being done by the Marathas, right? Then at that time, as we've discussed, industrial revolution was also brewing up. They wanted more market and more raw material. So he wanted the annexation of these Indian territories and end these Maratha Sardar. So he pressured them to sign the subsidiary alliance. Again, subsidiary alliance more favorable to the Britishers. They said, no, 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 too much interference are being done. Britishers also said that these Pindaris, which is hampering the Britishers, these Pindaris which are hampering the Britisher trade. And the Marathas are supporting these Pindaris. So on the pretext of that, they fought a war. That is the Third Anglo-Maratha War. Peshwa declared the war, Peshwa defeated, and Dominion was annexed. Peshwa was defeated and the Dominion was annexed. And finally, the Maratha Confederacy was dissolved. So this is the very small battle which happened. So very important battle that we have discussed, the Battle of Bhima Koregaon, in which the Peshwa finally lost. Holkar was the last to surrender and he signed the Treaty of Mandsaur. He appointed Pratap Singh the kingdom of Satara, which was under the subsidiary alliance, which will be lastly taken by the Lord Dalhousie, which we will discuss in the next session. So by 1818, except Punjab and Sindh, all were under the British Empire, and they will be taken up in the 1840s. 1840s, that story will also be done, that we have already discussed. So these are the two stories that we have already discussed. That is Hastings ruling with the Gorkhas and Hastings, the ending of the Maratha Confederacy. Then we'll discuss Hastings and the Rajputs very quickly. So Rajputs were still under the Marathas. Marathas used to own, for example, they used to take a lot of revenues from the Rajputs. So Lord Hastings work on the context that these Rajputs were the natural allies of the Britishers and the natural enemies of the Marathas, right? So once he has put these Marathas down, he wanted to keep this Rajput as vassal states. Vassal state means all the dispute. For example, Rajputs have any dispute, let's say with Marathas, then the intermediation will be done by the company. And second, they will furnish all their forces at the call of the paramount. Whenever the British want the forces of the Rajputs will give their forces to the Britishers. This is the idea of being the vassal state. So this is what Hastings want. Some sort of a treaty was done beforehand also, but at the end that was negated. Now Hastings came and he sent this Charles Metcalfe, and he negotiated the treaty with Udaipur, Jaipur, and Jodhpur. And they have signed this treaty with the Hastings, Metcalfe, and then Hastings, obviously, with the Britishers on the East India Company. And finally, the independence of the Rajputs also went. Any de jure independence were there, that also swept away in the strong pride of the British imperialism. Why? Because the way they have taken up the way they have broken up this Maratha Confederacy, the Rajput also thought that okay, it's better to be their vassal states rather than assert their independence and lose a lot of territory and lose a lot of money in the war with the Britishers. This is the story with the Rajput. Very simple. So what type of a question you can expect? They can ask you, they will give you statements. So Rajputs were finally, their independence was swept away under this particular Governor General. Who was the Governor General? So Governor General was the Lord Hastings. Then Hastings and the Mughals. What is the story with the Hastings and the Mughal? Now before Hastings, what was happening? Yes, Mughals were already defeated, done and dusted. But yes, they were treated with respect. Now Lord Hastings thought, why did he treat them with respect? He was jealous of it. That why this Mughal emperor get this honor and dignity when the company has all the states in their hand. They have beaten all the states, Indian states, princely states, but still why the company gives a lot of ascendancy, honor and dignity to the Mughal emperor? Why is it so? He was very jealous of it. He said that I want to be treated with dignity and respect. At that time, the Governor General used to treat the Mughal emperor as the Arjdas, or he used to give the petitions to the Mughal. And the Mughals treated the EIC as the servant of the emperor. Some sort of a seal was there. So this was the relation before Hastings. Now Hastings says, no, this is not done. When I have taken over all these territories, I need to put these people down. I need to put the Mughals down. So Hastings said that I want to be treated with respect. Though in his time nothing is significant happened, but in his successors was treated with respect. For example, when the Lord Amherst went on to meet the Mughal emperor, he was treated with equality. Then 1835 till 1835, the Company's coin carried the stamp of the Mughal emperor, but after that, that stamp also finished. Okay, so Mughal emperors, the authority, the dignity that they enjoyed got lost in the times of the or it was the Lord Hastings who resented or who said that this will not go on. Then very importantly, as we have discussed, the suppression of the Pindaris. Now, nobody knows exactly what is the origin of the Pindaris. We will see also. But what you need to remember with the subsidiary alliance that we have discussed, that Wellesley have signed with a lot of Marathas and other states, these native soldiers, those who are got unemployed, they got unemployed and they become part of this Pindaris. The same story we will look at the Thagis as well. So these got unemployed, and then what happened? They joined these people who used to plunder. For example, if you are traveling from this to this place, they will plunder you in between. So British did not like it because it impacted all of their raw material and the market, raw material and the finished good to the market, and they did not like it. So they that we have to finish these Pindaris, and they have done it in the times of the Lord Hastings. So for example, the first reference of the Pindaris comes, origin, we don't know exactly what is the origin. First reference comes during the Mughal invasion of the Maharashtra. They did not belong to any particular caste or creed. They served army without the payments. That means they were allowed to plunder. For example, if I employ these Pandaris within my army, what I will say, I will not pay you anything. But if I win this territory, you have all the right to plunder that place as much as you want. In the times of the Baji Ravan, they are the irregular horsemen. They were attached to the Maratha army. Okay? Their leaders were both Hindus and Muslims. As we have discussed, they did not belong to any caste, creed, or religion. They have thousands of the followers. They plundered many places: Mirzapur, Shahabad, Nizam's territory, northern Sirkas. So Lord Hastings sent a large army, and the Pindaris were completely suppressed. So it was one of the crowning achievements of the Lord Hastings, that the suppression of the Pindaris. Okay? Pindaris pe you can expect one question along with the Pindaris and the Thagis. Thagis we will see in the times of the Warren William Bentinck. Then we'll look at the role of the different administrators in the time of the Lord Hastings. Now, Lord Hastings had got the service of the good administrator. For example, Thomas Munro. Thomas Munro was the governor of Madras, and he introduced the Rayatwari system. First system that we have discussed was the system of the permanent settlement in the time of the Cornwallis, and then consolidated in the times of the second one after Lord Cornwallis, that is Mr. John Shore. Then Elphinstone, he was the Bombay governor, and he implemented this Rayatwari in Bombay as well. John Malcolm, he was very instrumental in defeating the Marathas. And Charles Metcalfe, we have discussed, he was a resident at Delhi, and he had a treaty with the Rajput state that we have already discussed. In his time also, another system also started, that is the Mahalwari system, that we will see later on. In the northern part, he started this Mahalwari system. Northern and central India. If you talk about the reforms of the Lord Hastings, some of the repetitive things. Firstly, he did not only witness the territorial expansion, but also the progress of the administration. He approved the Rayatwari system in the Madras presidency under by Thomas Munro. Third, the judiciary Cornwallis Code was improved. The police system was of Bengal, which started in the times of the Cornwallis, was extended to the other region, right? Different areas, and Daroga was put under the in charge. Importance of the Indian Munsif increased during his administration. Now, this one is important. The separation of the power which Lord Cornwallis has started did not remain in the times of the Lord Hastings. In fact, the district collector were again given the charge of the district magistrate. That means he also used to judge these cases of the judiciary. Then Hastings also encouraged the foundation of the vernacular schools by the missionary and the others. So these are the some miscellaneous reforms by the Lord Hastings. So socio-cultural thing, for example, the Charter Act, which was given 1 lakh for the education, it was in the times of the Lord Hastings. Then establishment of the 2 colleges in Calcutta and Agra. He patronized these Hindu college. In fact, he was the patron-in-chief of the Hindu college set up in 1817 by the David Hare. Very important fact that you need to remember. We will discuss it again. But remember, the Hindu college established in 1817 by the David Hare. Then he relaxed the press restrictions, abolished the pre-censorship rules, which came in 1799. So some of the pre-censorship rules have come in the press, and he was the one who relaxed these press restrictions. We will again discuss this press restriction under a separate heading. Okay? So these were the times of the Lord Hastings. Lastly, the estimate of the Warren Lord Hastings. He was an able soldier and a brilliant administrator, followed vigorous forward policy, waged war extensively. His liberal views on education and the press are commendable. He suppressed Pindaris, defeated Marathas, and curbed the power of Gorkhas. Territorial gain expanded the British power. He was considered as the maker of the Bombay Presidency, especially post the defeat of the Marathas. Okay. Then, in nutshell, he completed and consolidated the work of the Lord Wellesley. Okay. So, for example, the question can be asked, a main question, that Lord Hastings completed and consolidated the work of the Wellesley comment. So then you have to talk about both the work of the Wellesley and the Lord Hastings. Okay. Now let us, I think we have given 5 questions, right? Let me add this particular questions to this particular. Chalo. So we have discussed him. Yes, slide. So we have discussed the times of the I'm not Warren Hastings, I'm Lord Hastings, and the things which were done in his time. Now this is your question number 7 for mains. The question is, as we have discussed, Lord Hastings consolidated in kya tha? Completed and consolidated the work. Completed and consolidated the work of Lord Wellesley. Quote unquote comment. This is your question number 7. Okay. Try this question because we have discussed both Lord Wellesley and Lord Hastings. So with which we finish our session. In the very next session, we will talk about the William Bentinck. Okay. So see you all in the next session. Bye bye for now. Thank you.